Hello, I'm Sally Pointer. It's been a while since we've done a hedge-bothering recipe, so today let's make something savoury for a change. This field had oats in it just a very few days ago, but they've not long harvested. The birds are in gleaning, but that's not what I'm after today. What I'm after is in the hedge surrounding it. And what we've got here are damsons. Beautiful, beautiful damsons. See how shiny they're going. They're finally ripe. And they do take a little while to get going around here. In fact, they're starting to drop off the trees. So you can tell already when they've got a nice squishy bit. And if I bite into one, you've got a green flesh. You can see the stone in the middle there. And they've got a little tartness, but they're definitely really delicious. Now, everyone's made damson jam, everyone's made damson wine, we've done damson chutney. This year the one thing we need in our cupboard is Damson Hoisin sauce, so I'd better get picking. And that should be more than enough, both for a batch of Damson Hoisin sauce, but also probably for a batch of damson brandy. So we're calling this Damson Hoisin sauce mostly because that's what it was called when I got the recipe, but also because it's essentially an Oriental inspired barbecue type sauce. It's probably not super authentic. You could just as well call it a damson barbecue sauce or something else, but anyway, that's the recipe name I had. That's what we're going with. It's really simple to do. You're going to need about 300 grams of onions. I just happen to have both red and white ones, so that's what I'm using. Roughly 75-80 grams of garlic, 200 grams of ginger, about 4 chillies. These ones really aren't very hot, so I might add a little bit of cayenne as well, just to give mine a kick. Just very much a matter of taste. Use milder ones if you prefer. Little bit of star anise. I've got about maybe 4 star anise there. You're going to need 500 grams of sugar. Mine's caster sugar, but I don't think it makes a big difference. A kilo of damsons, they're the important bits. Mine are actually looking quite frosty. They were so ripe when I picked them a couple of days ago that I froze them just to make sure they didn't go over. You're going to need 500 ml of vinegar, so that's mostly one of those bottles. And most important of all, half a cup of a good quality soy sauce. Now, if you've got gluten-free people in the family, make sure you've got a gluten-free soy sauce. Otherwise, pretty much any style will do. So, I'm going to chop these up. I'll pause and restart because you really don't want a video of me chopping things. But before I do, just in case you didn't know this, easiest way to peel garlic, ginger rather, is with a teaspoon. Makes it really, really quick. So, back in a second when this will be all chopped up. There we are, all good to go. I haven't chopped things up too finely. It really doesn't matter because you're going to be mashing and blending this later. I've done my best with the ginger, but tiny bits of skin, as long as it's not too woody, are absolutely fine. Same with the seeds on the chilli, leave them out if you like things really mild. If you like a little extra kick, leave them in. You're going to need a jam pan or a big heavy saucepan. Tip everything in. Once everything's in the pan, get it on the stove, relatively low heat. You want it to just be thinking about simmering, just ticking over. And the idea is we cook it till the vegetables are done, the plums are soft, and then we've got to pick the stones out. Always a fun job. After about 10 minutes or so, it should be looking like this. And the important thing at this stage is to just make sure you squash any of the damsons that haven't already burst. We've got to get all the stones out a little bit later. We won't do it just yet because they've still got flesh on them that's cooking flavours in. But just making sure, as you stir it, that any whole damsons get squished. That will really help. It's very runny at the moment. It's going to smell very vinegary, but that's going to mellow out in no time as all these lovely ingredients cook together. Once everything is squashed, and there's always one that escapes, give it another 15-20 minutes and then you should be able to start picking out the stones. Now, there's no help for it. You've got to get the stones out. They're really going to wreck your masher or blender, otherwise let alone your teeth. So once it's cooked to a point where the stones float free, just check they haven't got too much flesh on them. If they have, leave them a bit longer. You don't want to waste any goodness. But otherwise, hook them out, stick them in a dish, go back. They often drift to the side, so it's not usually too hard, but you've just got to keep doing it. I do know people who actually count in the number of damsons they start with so that they can check they've got all of the stones in the end. Now, the smell's already changing here. That sharp vinegary edge is leaving. It's still really runny, but that's okay. I'm going to come and stir it every couple of minutes. I'll pick out as many stones as I can, and we'll just keep going until I'm reasonably confident that all the stones are out. So I've been picking stones out steadily for a good 20 minutes now, and when you think you've got every last stone out, tell yourself that you're a very foolish mortal and there'll be at least half a dozen more hiding in there. This is the time to go and get your jars ready while it has a little think and more float up to the surface. So wash your jars in hot soapy water, pop them in to an oven on low and let them just sterilise away in there until you're ready to jar up. Keep looking for stones. When you think you've got them all, count out another 5 more. They will be in there. Moment of truth time. I'm sure there are probably still a couple of stones hiding in here, but I need to blend this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the star anise as best I can see it, mostly because it's just really hard and woody. Don't worry if there's little bits of it in there that you haven't spotted, but the really big chunks I'm just going to hook out. I might put them back in a minute. So all my big star anise. Okay, one last look for stones. Now my stick blender has seen better days, so it makes some quite funny noises. Anyway, I'm going to give this a little whiz, but you've got to do it carefully, and if you think you hear a stone, stop. That's one. Oh, that sounded like one. It doesn't matter how careful you are, there is always another stone in there. Keep checking it. Oh, there's one. Little horrors. They get everywhere. You really don't want to chop up those stones if you can help it. The little bits will be really hard on the teeth. You know, I check this so well, it's amazing. As soon as you start getting it worked down, they really come out of nowhere. Keep checking it. Those are the star anise there. Oh, that sounded like a stone. If you think you hit one, stop, check for bits. Anyway, I'm going to stop the video now. I'm going to finish whizzing this, then it's going to go back on the stove to be reduced to the right texture before we jar up. Once it's whizzed, you can put the star anise back in if you want, although I think mine's actually the flavour that I'm quite happy with. You just need to cook it until you get the consistency you want. So at the moment this is still quite loose. I want a sauce that I can paint onto things like duck and chicken and ribs and that sort of thing. So I want it a little bit thicker than this, but because I found more stones when I was whizzing, I actually picked another half dozen out. I'm fairly sure I heard one break. I'm going to sieve this at the end. I don't always. If I don't have any telltale clunk sounds, I don't bother. But I think this time, when I think it's just about there, I'm going to push it through a sieve just to triple check for sharp bits. And then I can always give it one more blending if I want, although I quite like a little texture. And then it just remains to jar it all up. Keep looking for stones. It's amazing how they get through. That's a lump of ginger, that bit. So I've reached the point of preserve making where my kitchen looks like a crime scene. I found at least 3 more stones and some partial ones. That's the pulp. That's the sieve bit. Now I could actually jar that up as a really smooth, loose sauce, and this as a sort of concentrate to add to things like stews and more robust things. But actually I'm going to wait till this has cooled enough that I can get a well scrubbed hand into it. I'm going to squidge through it and let my fingertips feel for anything sharp. Assuming I don't find any, that's going to have another whiz, and then I'll recombine the two. One more very quick boil then, mostly to make sure it's sterile, because otherwise the texture is pretty good now. And then we'll get it into jars. So I can have a quick cup of tea while that cools down enough so I can touch it. It's almost there. I've got quite tough hands. And then we'll go on to the jarring. Exciting. And with the aid of a jug, it's much easier to finish filling the jars, although I'm pretty sure that holding a camera whilst filling jam jars is really not a good idea, so I'll put it away and then we'll have a look at the finished result. There we are, all done. So I made 4 and a bit jars in the end. I'm glad I took the trouble to sieve, feel through it and then reblend. The end result is much nicer. Didn't have to do it last year. Last year I got all the stones first go, so just take that as a warning. It's worth the extra time to look for the stones in there. Now it's technically ready now, but it will be much nicer in 2 or 3 weeks. Pretty much all preserves are better when they've settled. It's gingery, it's spicy without being fiery, it's just sticky enough, it's not over sweet. And for a lot of us who forage and preserve, you can get a little bit fed up with endless jams and jellies. So something savoury, whatever you choose to call it, is a really nice addition. I'll put the quantities up in a slide right at the end. Whatever you're concocting, happy hedge bothering.